world of work. And it's really hard for me to do justice in a soundbite to his work, but I was listening to CDs of his on the way to and from the airport as I was thinking about my own journey here and what this book writing meant for me. And David White's was quite useful and helpful for me in terms of thinking about all the stuff that we talked about, what it means to be writing a book at this particular period in my life and why it's important to me to get it done.
Good. Well, just to let you and the listeners know, these three, as well as other folks that we've talked about, will have their information in the show notes so that you can just find them and link to them.
Right.
So I always want to make it easy for people to find folks that can influence good thinking. So good. What do you want to be remembered for?
Well, wow, I've never really thought that hard about that question. It might be a bit early for me to be thinking about legacy, or I'm in denial. But I don't know that. Other than I'd like my kids to remember. It's interesting. One of the things that happened around this book, as you might imagine, was Daddy's gone for a long period of time. He's only downstairs in the office writing, but he's gone for a long period of time. And I'm a very involved father, and it's very important to me to have a really solid, stable, thriving family unit on which to build a career. For me, it won't work without that. So that's job one in some ways. And my wife and I talked about, I'm going to be gone again Sunday because I need to be writing. And they're all going to the pool or the beach or whatever, and I'm missing out on some stuff. And we sort of aligned around the idea that it's really important for my girls, I've got two girls, to see what it takes to get something important done. If it's important to you, you need to commit to it and you need to sacrifice. And sometimes that means other people don't get to spend as much time with you. But it's in service of getting this book done, which I think the book is, I don't want to be anything other than have some humility around with the contribution this book will make. I hope it makes a contribution, but it's not, world changing, but it's important and it's a serious piece of work. And it was important for me to get the ideas down and get them out. So I think I want my girls to remember that, their dad was the kind of person that knew what he wanted and was prepared to commit to make it happen. And that required sacrifices. But it was part of his dream at that particular time. And I want them to be those kinds of people too. I want them to figure out what it is they want and then have the character to go after it and get it done. So if I want to, the only people I suppose, really care about remembering me for anything is my own children. And I want them to remember that he knew what he wanted and he went after it. And if everybody, did that, was lucky enough to have to be privileged enough to be able to sit and think about what is it that I want and get clear on that, and then the strength of character to go after it and make it happen, then the world becomes an even more interesting place than it already is. So that would be what I would choose.
What an important example. Yeah, that's good. Who are some people who are doing work right now that inspires or lights you up? And then who is somebody that's really not currently in the spotlight doing some work that's making a difference who deserves to have some light shine on them?
Yeah, okay, so I'll go two places. I'm a huge fan of Elon Musk because, he's a great example of what we've talked about here in the sense that, how do you make an electric car that is so incredibly sexy and powerful that it scratches all the itches? It's kind of, it's the future of, arguably anyway, of electric cars, and lots of people want to buy it. He's made it an aspirational vehicle. And in order to do that, he had to do all kinds of things that Detroit had said weren't doable. And he did that by going back to first principles. I don't know if you've heard him talk about this idea of first principles. We didn't make it into the book because lots of things didn't make it into the book, but it's very close to the idea of path dependence in the sense that his way of clearing all the clutter away of all the biases and assumptions that hold us back and these presupposed ideas about how things work is to go back to first principles. How much energy can you get in a battery? How do you get it in there and how long does it last? First principles, physics. And I think that's one of the reasons why he's such a brilliant engineer and clear thinker about what's possible, is that ability to strip everything down and get back to first principles. I love what he's doing with Tesla. I love the fact that he's building an absolutely mega, enormous factory to make batteries somewhere out in, I think is it Utah or Nevada? I can't remember. Somewhere in the desert, and it's going to be solar powered and all the rest of it. And I start to see the possibilities for a better future when I start thinking about what he's doing. And there's another guy I want to mention very briefly there. Peter Diamandis has written a book called Abundance. If you're not optimistic by nature, that book will make you an optimist. And how strong a recommendation can you have for a book than that? So Peter Diamandis, the book's called Abundance. And a lot of it's science fiction and maybe pie in the sky, but I enjoyed that read because of that. I'm going to take a real risk here on the personal stuff, who's doing great work, and call out a friend of mine who may not thank me for it, so I'll have to be careful what I say here. But I have a very, very good friend, probably my best friend in the world. He's a guy called Jelly Helm. He works out of Portland, Oregon. He has a small studio Jelly, and he does really great design, branding, marketing, communications work with a real soul and spirit to them. And he chooses his clients very carefully. He works with Dr. Bronner's, for example, because he wants to be as closely aligned with their values and those values as he can be. And he and I have the most courageous, revealing, vulnerable, honest, open, catalytic, cathartic conversations together about work, the future of work, what's worth doing, what's not worth doing. And he's a great friend, and he's somebody that everybody will benefit from knowing and hearing about on every level, not just his work, his professional work, but his personal work that he does on his own personal development. So Jelly Helm in Portland, Oregon.
And did you want to also mention Dr. Waters?
Yeah, so Louise, she's a story from the book. Dr. Louise Waters. So the short story of this, I suppose, is a couple of years ago when the book was starting, it was nascent, and I'd told enough people that I was writing it, partly as a way of making sure that they held me accountable. Like, I'm going public with this, I'm writing a book. And then you get asked about it at all the inopportune moments, like a dinner party in Sausalito. And I started talking a little bit about the book, and Louise Waters, Dr. Louise Waters, who is the CEO of a charter school system in the East Bay here called Leadership Public Schools, was sitting opposite me, and she said, if you want to know about constraints, you've got to come over to my schools. These are in some of the poorest neighborhoods in the Bay Area, Richmond and Oakland. And I'm dealing with constraints. I've got kids who show up and they've given up on school. They don't want to learn. I've got budget problems. It's 2008. The funding just got cut. I've got no technology in schools to speak of, yada, yada, yada. And if I want to get these kids ready to college readiness in their high school period, I've got to accelerate them 2 to 3 grade levels in any given year. And I was like, that's impossible. Yeah, but that's the brief they set themselves, the bold ambition. That's that side of the propelling question. How do we get these kids to college readiness and really engage them in school when they've given up on school? And I won't tell you the story because it will take me too long as to how they have been able to do that. They haven't fully succeeded in their ambition yet because it's a massive stretch, but they're making enormous strides in some very creative and clever ways. But meeting Louise was great because, she is not the archetypal innovator. You don't look at her and go, oh yes, the crazy hair. She's an academic. She's long into her career, but she's clever, she's creative, she's motivated, she's optimistic, and she has this great kind of spirit about her, as do all her teaching staff. And they've been able to do remarkable things with very little resource that are having a profound impact on the lives of the kids in her schools. And she was just a wonderful, wonderful human being. And I'm going to continue my relationship with her. So she's really glommed onto some of the concepts in the book. So after I'd interviewed her and told her story in the book, she asked me more about it, and we shared some of the concepts, and she's really taken it to heart. She's using these concepts in her schools now, in the school system. So I'll be going out to meet with her and her team on June 17th, I think it is, to hear from them what more they've been able to do using some of the concepts in this book. So that'll be a big day for me because it'll be validation of some of these concepts, or not, I suppose. We'll see. Yeah.
Good. Well, I love Spotlight going on to people who are doing inspiring and incredible things, but yet they're not yet getting the kind of national or international attention as of yet that can inspire other people to make a difference in their communities as well. Is there any one thought that you'd like to leave with listeners that you believe could make a difference in their lives?
Well, it's as simple as when a constraint appears in all its different many guises, a limitation that you immediately feel, you immediately sense, darn, this is going to hold me back. This is going to thwart me. This is going to stop me from becoming who I want to be, what I want to do with my business, my work, my personal life, or whatever, is to just take a moment to stop and don't just take that as a given, that this is inevitable, that this will hold you back, to try to find what is the opportunity in it. I'm not suggesting for a minute that every constraint could be made beautiful. But if you just give yourself an opening and open up to the possibilities that it might contain and think about it systematically through the tools in this book, that could be a game changer in ways big and small for anybody. So just take that moment and stop and think, how is this constraint beautiful?
Mark, it's been a pleasure for me not just to read your words, but to have our conversation. Thank you for your time.
Thanks for having me. I really have enjoyed the opportunity to just kind of extemporize on the themes and have a longer discussion about it, because I think I learn a lot when I allow myself to talk without thinking in terms of sound bites. I learn a lot about how I'm thinking about something. So I appreciate the opportunity to do that.
Thanks for listening to The Creator's Journey. If you enjoyed our theme music, the name of the song is You've Got a Home by Krista Wells. If you enjoyed the show and would like to see it fare well, as opposed to saying farewell to it, please go to iTunes and subscribe. While you're there, if you give us a favorable rating and review, it'll make a huge difference in whether a newcomer is able to easily find it or it just gets buried. And remember, you're welcome to join the community and conversation at thecreatorsjourney.com to make suggestions and get updates about upcoming guests and notes from each show. Till soon, my friend.